What's going on, people? Happy Monday. I always say it. It's always true. Special treat. Tonight Heart is back. And yeah, we're gonna let it flow. This is live. This is not pre-recorded like the other time. So welcome back, Aaron.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. So for those who don't know me, I go by Tune Thy Heart. I really only just started posting content on YouTube a couple of months ago, and it's mainly my music stuff. But we met on TikTok. That's where I got my start before my first account got banned, and then I had to start up again. And I think you were a couple months behind me getting banned and having to restart.
Yeah, I was behind the curve on that. I was like, oh man, it's tough. You got banned. Like my count's good though, and it was like a month later. Yeah, we were in the same boat. Swimming in the same pool. Maybe it was your fault that I got banned because
probably
we became friends.
Yeah, I'll take the blame. Everybody that followed me or were friends with me went down alongside of me, which is actually not too far from the truth. There was a handful of people right around the same time that all got banned, but whatever. We haven't talked about. Sorry, go ahead.
No. We should talk about that. I mean, because this is kind of we'll get into this a little bit. I mean, of course, obviously, you guys see the title is profiting off fear and fake news. So, as this might be a little bit inside baseball, and we don't want it to be, but I think I want to share this topic because I think a lot of people know, and as somebody who's kind of looking from a different perspective now than I used to, like if this is not the end times like we're taught in the left behind eschatology, I think that with that kind of mindset of like, what if it's not like that? You kind of see these accounts that are preying on people's fear, and maybe rightly or wrongly, or maybe their heart's in the right place to make people afraid for the times we're living in. Are they doing it the correct way? Do some of these people know more than they're letting on, and they're playing to people's emotions? So with that being said, it comes from a mindset of like that myself and Aaron over here who make content, we know how to make viral videos. We've done it. We've done many of them at this point. And with that knowledge, like sometimes we have to say, are we making these things for the right reasons? Are we unnecessarily trying to motivate people to watch and to click? And anyways, Aaron, yeah, first of all, because I don't think we ever really did this before, like Aaron, how did you even get on social media to be able to share and do all the things you're doing now?
Yeah, so I don't like social media at all. I reserve the word hate for very few things, but I abhor social media with a passion. I don't really like much about it, but I also believe that, like, the things that are some of the biggest problems in our society, like social media and just society in general, they can be wielded, for good. And so, like, I made up my mind, I want to say probably 7 years ago, when I was on Facebook. I was only on Facebook at the time, and I started going hard about all of the stuff that like is really trending right now on TikTok, in terms of like flat Earth, in terms of like the secret society stuff, in terms like literally the whole spectrum of things. And at the time, I was professionally doing the account that I had built was full of professionals, like CEOs and business owners and like very high up professional people, because those were my clients. And so I started getting really bold about this stuff, and I lost a lot of business. I lost a lot of clients. It really quickly became apparent to me that if I was going to speak on these things, that I was going to have to probably work 100% for myself and sort that all out. And but it was so liberating for me. Like, it really started like separating. It was so nice to speak my mind and just create like an environment for people, because it's not that nobody was speaking their mind at that time, but like no one was. very few people were talking about those types of things at that time, especially on that platform.
Mhm.
And what was wild to me and what kind of kept me going, because there was a handful of times where I'm like, man, maybe I should just keep my mouth shut and just keep doing my thing. But like, I had some of these CEOs and higher up, like powerful people reaching out to me and saying, I agree with everything you're saying, but I can't, like, just so you know, I can't like your posts. I can't comment on your posts because I can't afford for my clients to see that I agree with what you're saying, right? Either about flat earth or pick a topic. And it started getting weird. It started getting really weird. I had built a pretty big account on there, and they came to me and they like threatened to lock me out of my account if I didn't give them like all of my personal data. Like they wanted a copy of my driver's license and all of this other stuff. And they're like, you have a large enough account where we want to give you an added layer of security, the same kind of treatment or stuff that we give to like politicians and this and that. And they posed it as this like for my benefit kind of situation. But I was like, nah, my Holy Spirit discernment was just like, no, I don't think so. So I actually ended up deleting my account, and I wasn't on there for a while, or I wasn't on any social for a while. I'm still not on any of the Zuckerberg platforms, but then somebody that I had like befriended on Facebook was on TikTok. And they came to me and they're like, hey, you really should like make a TikTok and start sharing stuff. So that's what I did. And for the first like year I was on there, I didn't even post my face or anything because I didn't really have a huge desire. I just kind of wanted to like see how it worked and to see what clicked and what people wanted to see. Had a few videos go viral. And then I reached a point in my life where I was like, all right, there's things that I want to talk about and things that I need to say that like I can't say any other way than to just get on camera and share these things with people and talk about these things. And so that's what I started doing, man. And that kind of ties in with like everything that we're going to be talking about today with regards to learning how the algorithms work, learning how they change, learning what is trending, learning what is going to be fed and pushed to the masses, versus the things that are not going to be pushed to the masses. And it's kind of wild, like the intricacies that go into all of that, because like you said, making a viral video is not hard. It's really not hard. And I don't say that arrogantly. I say that because it's really just like, it's like math. It really is. It's just very simple.
Well, I mean, it's like everything else. Yeah. So it's process of elimination. If you've been on TikTok for a year and you've had more than one, you would say, well, I can see a pattern with the videos I have that have gone viral.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, so as somebody who, you sound similar to me in the way that your intention was not to become a big content creator.
Not at all.
But how much does it influence you when you have a 1 million view video? I mean, obviously I can speak for myself where it's saying like that. I was even lamenting with Aaron today that as I've transitioned more to YouTube, part of me, obviously, I did like the rush of making videos daily and then someone pop off and it's like you go from like anonymity to being like 15 minutes of fame, this internet fame. And I know that that's not really what I want, but I think obviously that's the algorithm is made for you to get that rush. And so however you got it, maybe you didn't get it by intending to get it, but they want you're chasing the dragon, right? As they say, like in the drug, you're chasing that dragon. So you're trying to get that high again. And obviously there's lots of people who will do it, in any way possible to get that next big video.
Yeah. I mean, so we're all human, and regardless of, at least I think we are. And regardless
let me see all y'all's eyes.
Yeah, you're right. Like, everybody do this for me really quick. So like the reality of it is that as humans, regardless of where we're at on our path, spiritually speaking, it's human nature to want to receive praise. It's human nature to want to receive positive attention, positive affirmation, positive
validation,
support, validation, whatever it is. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but that's kind of the problem with social media in general. And that's a kind of a sidebar topic, but I feel like social media really just exposes the truth about who you really are, like as a creator, as a consumer, regardless of which end of the spectrum that you're on, because you really, some of these content creators, I don't know how some people don't see it, but like all you got to do is pay a little bit of attention. I mean, discernment obviously helps a lot, but when you see the topics of things that are being posted and you see like you can just tell, and scripturally speaking, by observing the fruit of what's taking place without even having to assume, without even having to judge, or without even having to, and I'm not saying it in a negative light, but we have to make a choice at some point in time, because it is very validating to have a video that you spend time on and that you put, energy into, and maybe sacrifice some family time for, or some work time or whatever. There's time and money and energy that goes into making this content. So when something starts to pop and people want to see it and they want to interact with it, especially when they interact with it and they're saying, oh, this is great, this is amazing. That's a great feeling, and not even in a bad way, but just in a, okay, good, my efforts paid off. It's reaching people. Like it's hitting its mark. We're accomplishing something. And that's a really easy feeling to get addicted to, especially for people that don't have that elsewhere. Right. Like, especially for people that are either married and unhappy, or not married at all, or whatever the case is. And they're not getting that level of attention anywhere else. And most importantly, they're not getting their love and affection from our Heavenly Father. Like, it's really easy to get sucked into that trap and addicted to that, to where like, yeah, let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
And let's create another one. I'm sure you want to chime in now. I've got more to add, but I want to stop talking.
No, I think you're correct on that. I think for the people who have made content like ours, there's not a lot of people in our personal sphere, like locally, that you can talk about this kind of stuff too. So it's like, that's part of it, where it's like, you do want, I think that's like, even with TikTok, because people say, oh, TikTok's this, TikTok's that. But I think like guys like us who just literally just started making content, and then we watch content like we make. Yeah. And we probably watch a lot less than you guys realize. We probably don't watch
I don't watch much at all.
I mean, even like I feel bad if I don't finish watching my friends' videos on there, because I know it helps them to finish.
Yeah, same.
But it's typically, we're making videos, but we want to connect with like-minded people. And because there's not a lot of like-minded people, you have to stretch out over the whole earth, basically different countries, in order to find people who connect with you in that kind of way. And so I think before this, and we'll get into like kind of like the topic at hand, was the fact that when we first probably got on these apps, like I had, multi-million view videos that I made not one penny from, like, because they weren't giving us any money to make these videos at the beginning. And so when people are doing that, so obviously they could be doing it for two reasons. Either they believe what they're saying, they like the community, or that they're doing it because they believe it. But now we're getting to the place where these algorithms, it's just, obviously most people know this at point, people are making money making these videos. So you're getting paid by the click, you're getting paid by the view, they're selling ad space on this. So now you have to wonder, and is this what you came to it, where like that guys like me woke up in 2020, the fake news era, when fake news is getting out. So tell us about that video you made, because obviously that's the main meat of this topic.
The one that I made today?
No, the one about, like, basically you were saying that people turned off the news and then they turned on social media to get their news.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my, the point of everything we're talking about today. So like, so many people woke up during 2020, and so many people woke up during that time frame, And so many people are familiar with, that's fake news, that's fake news. And regardless of like political affiliation or when you started hearing that, I don't care where you fall on the spectrum of like politics or who you trust in politics or any of that. Everybody knows by now that these news stations have not been entirely honest with us. Everybody knows by now that there's been agendas that have been pushed by these stations through news, obviously through the other programming, but specifically through news. And so like everybody was just over it. And I remember at the time, specifically, I believe in 2020, the big thing for everyone to say was like, we are the news now. Like we are the news, right? Like we are the news. And how true that is now in 2024. The problem with that is that like, it's literally true. Like they went from being the fake news to us being the fake news, because sadly, and we had a problem with them, but like in reality, they were just getting a paycheck, man. They just wanted to read those lines off so that they could provide, for their families, for themselves, have this lavish lifestyle or just a basic lifestyle. Who knows their motives? We can't speak to that, but they were just people that were doing their jobs and getting paid for it. And so what they did, which is what society always does, is they give those tools to the people so that the people can create their own drama and fight amongst themselves and disseminate that information amongst the people so that they can perpetuate whatever madness has been taught to us.
Meet your old boss, same as the old boss. Meet your new boss, same as the old boss.
Yes,
it's it's funny, like in the way that people talk about everyone cut the cord, right? So we don't have DirecTV or cable anymore, but so we got all these streaming platforms, and so now when you actually add up all the bills of all the streaming platforms people have,
right? All the monthly subscriptions.
It's more than the cable you paid, and now they have commercials on them.
Yeah. No, it's like the joke's on us. Like, and it's because, and people that don't pay attention to the weeds, right? People that don't look at the in between things, as society is shifting and like the trends and like the way this was and then the way that is, like people that aren't hyper observant, they don't even notice this stuff. They're just being programmed along with everybody else. And then before you know it, we arrive to where we're at now, where you've got like literally Christian, quote unquote, truthers who are perpetuating straight up lies, like straight up things that I know for a fact these people know that it's not true what they're saying. They know, or it's fabric, or it's what's the word? It's exaggerated.
Lie or lies by omission.
Or that.
Like they don't say something that they know is true. I mean, definitely.
So it's like, so at that point, that's when it becomes a spiritual accountability thing, because it's like, when I see someone doing that, because the tendency in the truther community, I really don't like that phrase, but like it's the only way I really know how to refer to it, because the truther community is large, and there are many facets to the truther community. The problem with the truther community is that everybody seems to think that just because you consider yourself a truther and you want to talk about the quote unquote truth, that we all agree on everything, that we've all done the same research, that we've all gone down the same rabbit holes, that we've all had the same personal experiences, that we all agree on like all the things. And the one thing that I've learned in the truther community is that couldn't be further from the truth. Ironically, like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, just because you consider yourself a truther and just because you've learned about a couple of these topics, who do you serve? Like, I'm just going to get straight to it. Like, who do you serve? What are your intentions? Why are you here? Why are you making this content? Like, what is the goal? Like, and then there's the goal that you're going to tell me, and then there's the real goal, right? And they might be the same. They might be dovetailing into each other, but like, I can only speak for myself in this regard. And I'll just say that this was my journey. And I had to ask myself all of those questions, because it did start out with me wanting to just share the truth as I saw it, and to expose the things that I knew we were being lied to. Even though I got laughed at hysterically by so many people when I first started sharing this stuff, people still make fun of flat earthers. So can you imagine, 7 years ago on Facebook, when I've got a whole thing full of professionals, and I went from like posting pictures of me and my expensive clothing looking all sharp and snazzy, trying to get deals and business from people, to all of a sudden saying, hey, space is fake, the earth is flat, y'all have been lied to, like the Bible tells us all of this, and all the things. And the amount of ridicule and scoffing that I got was unreal. Like your average person today that's starting up on a truther account, they would not have been able to weather that storm, I can promise you right now. But I was also at a point in my personal life, because this has got a lot to do with it. A lot of people are in positions where they can't afford to be certain ways online, right? They can't afford to share things like that or talk about things like that, because it will interfere with their job or their income or their family. And I was at a point, I had just gone through a divorce, and I was really going through, like, I was ready to just do the work, man. I was ready to just like heal. I was ready to just figure out exactly who I was, and to not be all of the things that I hated about myself, and to really just go deeper with the Holy Spirit. And it's been a journey, to say the least. But my point in saying all of that is that, I didn't care, and I still don't care. Like, I don't care, and I don't mean it in a rude way. I do not care what people think about the things that I have to say. I don't say them to get people to agree with me. I don't say them to get people to jump on my ship. I don't need anybody on my ship. Like, I'm on the Father's ship, and like, you're on the Father's ship with me or you're not. So like, it's that simple to me. And so when I see people that are on a similar journey to where I was, I don't get mad at them. I don't get upset. It also just depends on the context. But like, I see a little bit of myself, because through that journey, I got sucked into it, man. I'm not going to lie. I got sucked into it. I got a couple viral videos, and I will say this much, and that is that as wild as some of the stuff that I was sharing was, I still did my absolute best to make sure that I was sharing the truth. I still did my absolute best to make sure that like these were things that I had researched and vetted, and like that I truly and genuinely believed in. I still was doing my best to lead people back to Jesus, and to make sure that they understood that's where it was coming from. But on the same hand, at the exact same time, especially with my music background, I knew exactly what I was doing with some of those scary sounds and scary, like I knew exactly.
I like the scary music. I mean, I think that it's like,
there's a time and a place for it.
Well, it's funny though, because it obviously you have to pick music for the videos, because they sound weird if they don't have any music in them.
Yeah.
And yeah, generally you have to get some ambient music, and some people obviously say, oh, you got to stop with the music, but they do set a tone. And I think that, I mean, let's just be honest. These movies, these videos are supposed to be entertaining too. So if it's kind of a spooky thing, you kind of play a little spooky music. But I think what you said, the one thing I really want to go back to is it's the why that matters. And that's why I feel like that even people are sharing now, they might not be correct about everything they're saying, but if their heart is in the right place, I think that's obviously, there's nothing, I won't say there's nothing wrong with it, but I would say that I know that God looks at that and is more honored by somebody who knows, whose motivation is correct.
1,000,000%.
And I feel like that for me, it probably is a better thing that I feel like that I started making videos at a time where, again, we weren't getting paid. And then I see probably the next generation of people making videos. Immediately they start making videos, they're getting paid right away.
Yeah.
That would probably have been a trap, because it's like, because then your motivation is divided. And so I think I had a time where I was successful, then I was shadow banned, and then I was making popular videos again, and I was still continuing to make them. And I think that a lot of us, we just wanted to be able to speak out. We felt led to do it. I feel like obviously the success gives you more motivation to do it.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, I think us as people who do it more than just the normal amount, obviously, you have to constantly check your own intentions. And I think the cool thing is, I would say that I always try to bring this up to people who are thinking about doing what we're doing. If I get a 1,000,000 view video and I get like money for it and I get all the pats on the back, you just think about like when Jesus talks about how if that's what you're looking for, you got your reward.
Yeah,
But if you,
that is your
but if you,
reward.
but if you got like, if you didn't get all those things, you got laughed at, you got everyone saying you're stupid. Well, maybe your reward is in heaven where you want it to be. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're better.
Yeah,
It's like you're better off sometimes not having all the earthly success because our heart will never be satisfied with that. Like we continue to want more of that when it's like, I always think about the prophets. I'm in my Bible study. So I went from Genesis, I'm going to Revelation. I just got to Isaiah today. So like I'm getting to the prophets nice. where I always think like when you get to Jeremiah and it's like God's telling him, and in Ezekiel too, no one's going to listen to you, Ezekiel. No one's going to listen to you, Jeremiah. But you're still going to have to go tell them all.
Yeah.
And so you think about like, so obviously that's the faithfulness that actually gets you like real treasures in heaven, real honor with God, not versus the guy who's got, all the adulation from every person on social media.
Yeah.
That's not why we should be doing it.
That should never be the reason. And I've said this from the beginning, and I'll say this now, and I mean it. I genuinely mean this. The numbers on TikTok even more so than most socials, but socials in general, on TikTok, the numbers they're so blown out. Like they are not accurate. They're not accurate at all. And they also just don't matter. Like I recently had I made a video talking about exactly what we're talking about. In fact, the video we're talking about where I said, we have become the news and the fake news and all of that stuff. And then maybe it wasn't that video. Maybe it was the other video I made talking about celebrities, because there's that whole cancel celebrities thing now. But that's right. So that was another video I made where I was talking about how like I think it's great everyone wants to cancel celebrities, but then like what do we do about everybody that wants to be a micro celebrity? Like we're trying to be like the people we're trying to cancel. Like
it's like the idea of like Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, they have no talent, but everyone actually like secretly wants to be them.
And more than not having talent, because I think that like that's an age old thing, right? Like most people can sail through life on looks alone. And I'm speaking personally, obviously. But I'm kidding. But like the whole premise is that they're not using their platforms for good. They're not using their platforms to bring awareness to the things that are most important.
And well, you know what it reminds me of, there's this clip, and I'm not sure exactly who the person who said it was. She was kind of like this model, and they were saying like that fame used to be a result of talent and like success.
Yeah.
And it was almost like that was not what you were seeking. It's kind of like if you're a talented musician and you weren't looking to be famous, you were looking to make good music.
Be a good musician and make good music.
The result was fame. And you might not even want that, which obviously you see that a lot where certain people don't seek the spotlight. But she's saying, but now you have this generation of people coming up who they want to be famous.
It's the total opposite.
And so you're saying like, what will somebody be willing to do to become famous?
Right.
And I think that's obviously, you can see that on social media. Like, what will you, if all you want is attention, all you want is clicks, well, what will you be willing to do? And you obviously you can see the worst of the worst on social media all the time.
Oh yeah.
What they're willing to do to be famous, when you realize like, yeah, that's
dude, I see TikTokers on lives doing rituals.
Oh,
like doing rituals to get into the club. I see them making the symbols and doing things that are so obnoxious. And like, these are people we all see on lives every now and then. If you scroll long enough, and they're doing whatever it takes to get in and to be a part of all of that, and to get the money and to get the fame and all of that. But like there's also, that's also like misconstrued. I think it's very misunderstood. And my point in that is that on that video that I'm talking about, I had someone attack me like hard and say, I'm filled with the Holy Spirit and I've never had a peace about you. And first you were selling merch on here and now you're pushing your music. And like that told me one thing, first of all, and that is that they haven't listened to any of my music or seen any of my content about my music, because I really have gone out of my way to not make that about me at all. There is no money in making music to stream. Like, believe me, there is no money in that. Like no one's going to make any money from streaming music, even if it goes ultra viral. That's just not going to happen. But they were attacking me, saying that I was trying to be one of those micro celebrities because they see me a certain way, and because of my follower account, right? And because I'm making music, and because their final point was, why do your videos get pushed through and then an account like mine gets silenced? And I go and I look at their account, and here's the deal, dude. Like, and I was very gentle with this person. Like, I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. I was very confused, if I'm being honest. But like, I was really trying to be, and I had to pray because I got a little disheveled at first, but I had to pray about how to handle it. And they were just wrong. But me telling them that they were wrong wasn't going to do anything. So like, I didn't really know how to handle it. But like, I tried to have a dialogue and get to the bottom of it. But I'm like, you really think somebody with 100 and something thousand followers? I think I'm at 142 now, and it was like 125 at the time, thousand, which is really not. I'm not like, it's really not that hard to get to. If
I think this is the place where like you and I, once you have achieved 100,000 followers on TikTok, you realize it's actually not that big a deal. I mean, I know a lot of people would say, "Oh gosh, that's like
it's first all in world the brain, problem." Man.
It's TikTok is a quirky algorithm. I think if you got 100,000 subs on YouTube, I think most people would know that like that's a lot of work, and that is probably a little bit of fame. Like people could have 100,000 subs and they could have 500 views on a video at max, because
if you yes, if you start on TikTok and like, and I'm going to put this challenge out there, if you start on TikTok and YouTube at the exact same time, it's easier to get to 100,000 followers on TikTok than it is to get to 1,000 followers on YouTube.
That's probably about right.
I genuinely mean that. Like, if you're starting from scratch, like I believe that. So my point though is that they like, none of you who are watching this should ever look at anybody on the app as a celebrity. Certainly not someone that's got 100, 200, 300, 400. I don't care if they've got 500 to a million.
Question them
or 2 million followers. It doesn't matter.
Question them way more when they've got 1 million on TikTok.
Well, to me, it's like any other job out there or any other industry, especially the entertainment industry. There are people all along the watchtower, and they're all looking out, and they don't want people coming into their territory. So you've got people right around the 500,000 follower category that are keeping an eye on the people that are anywhere between 100 and 500,000 followers. And then you've got the people right around 1 million that are keeping an eye on them. You've got people that are at like 2 million, keeping, like, everyone's looking out. And I'm just being honest, like, they basically decide who they're going to let continue to flourish and who's not going to flourish, because they will band together and they will mass report accounts on people that they don't want to continue or to succeed. Like, that 100% is what happened to me when my first account got banned at like 245,000 followers.
Woe to you when all men speak well of you. If you haven't been banned on TikTok, then I've got questions about you.
Yeah, I mean, like, so it's there's so many. I'm trying to like articulate all of this the best way that I can.
What would you say for people that, I mean, I think that to me, what I get, and I said, obviously I come back to this place, is because as a Christian, I think the main part is like this. I mean, if you're not a Christian, I mean, obviously this doesn't apply to you at all, because I know that you guys, again, some people get it twisted and they're like, well, God says you got to do this. He's like, no, you don't have to. You only have to do that if you want to be close to him. So if you don't, like, so, but obviously to believers and obviously people we should be holding accountable, I would say when I first got on TikTok, the main reason I was pushing fear, and it was kind of unknowingly, is because I believed we were in the end times. And I guess it's interesting to think that, like, if the end times were in the times of Jesus, like, how does that change things? I mean, like I said, it doesn't mean we're not saying we're not coming to the end of some kind of a cycle, because I think most of us instinctively feel like we're
catastrophic things are coming. People feel that.
It feels like that. I mean, it sure does. But I mean, I guess if you think about it, like the way that people have thought Jesus is coming back every decade
forever
since there's been decades, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, like, you think about it. So, like, you think about 1948 Israel, in 1988 would have been 40 years. So they had 88 reasons Jesus coming back in this time, and obviously they realized, oh gosh, that's a biblical generation, and so then they had to, like, push it back, and they had to find different reasons. So I believe this, and I think this is why I feel like that I don't feel too bad about that I was wrong. I felt for sure that, like, this is the end times. And so I was pointing out stuff like the mark of the beast, potential mark of the beast signs, third temple signs, one world religion signs, one world government signs, the Daniel statue thing. And so I remember as a kid growing up in the Left Behind generation, like watching those movies.
Oh yeah.
The idea of the mark of the beast is terrifying. You either get this mark on your hand or you go to the guillotine. I mean, like, that's the way it's presented in this thing.
That's it.
So when you're showing this stuff, I felt like I actually made a video about this one time. Somebody was saying, like, you're trying to scare people. And I said, some people should be scared.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
And, and I'm saying, like, so if they are scared, like, I feel like that as somebody like me who can look at these signs of saying, like, well, if God says some scary thing, you think about the prophets of God. If you guys don't repent, God is going to send an army from someplace you don't even know, speaking a language you've never even heard, and they're going to burn your place down. Yep. Okay, so was Jeremiah selling fear? I mean, should they have been afraid? Heck yeah, they should have been afraid.
They should have been, yeah.
They should absolutely have been afraid. So I thought, like, that if you're not right with God, you should be afraid. And obviously, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Mm-hmm. Turning away from evil is understanding. So, like, I'm not going to say I'm not going to scare you. I guess the main thing is kind of like that. Are you trying to push that over? I mean, like, are you trying to push that when there's nothing there? I mean, like, if I point out something, hey, you know what? The dollar value is really dropping, and obviously you guys should be paying attention to what you're spending money on. And this, oh, you're just trying to scare people. It's like, well, there's a fine line between telling people things that are uncomfortable and to look out for things versus, like, am I trying to scare you when there's no, like, recourse? It's kind of like the idea of, like, that being fearful or anxious when you can go fix something, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like when you have, like, you think about, like, you have a deadline at work. Like, if you're in school, you have, like, a test due. You're anxious about it. Well, you can kind of fix that by actually preparing, doing
exactly.
Like, that kind of fear is okay.
Yeah.
Now, fear of just, like, like, oh man, what if the Russians start to fire bombs at us tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you supposed to do about that?
There's nothing you can do about it. You can pray.
Yeah, I mean, other than if that's where it leads you to, is like that. Well, what if I die tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, everyone should think like that.
Absolutely.
What if I die tomorrow?
Every day, every single day.
I should be right with God, and then if it happens, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, obviously I can't prevent that. Like, so I think that's kind of like the different mindset of, like, but if I am pushing a tribulation mindset, like the tribulation's coming or the rapture's coming, and I might be, and if you might be left behind, and then what happens when you're left behind? Well, obviously the pre-tribbers are at the wedding feast, and everyone else is getting their heads chopped off with their tribulation saints.
Right.
Like, so I think that's the kind of thing where, as Christians, especially Bible believers, you should be able to question those Christian truthers more than anybody, and they should be patient with the comments. Correct?
Yeah. No. Undoubtedly, and I think that's that's I think that most Christian truthers, their intentions are right. I think that most of them, you know, they're into these things, and so they're only sharing things that they're into, that they've researched on their own, because during their own journey they found out some fascinating things, and so they want to share it with the world. That's the whole reason why you see hundreds of creators regurgitating the same content, but they've got different faces and different hairstyles, and they're different ages, and they appeal to different people, and that's fine. We need that. But there is a point in time. So like, yes, the truth is the truth. And sometimes the truth is terrifying. Straight up. Like sometimes the truth is absolutely terrifying until it's not terrifying. And how does it not become terrifying? I mean, faith, man, that's it. That's that, like faith, the salvation, the level of love and faith that we gain with the Holy Spirit through the building of our faith. You know, his perfect love casts out all fear. Like there's just no other better way to put it. That's the whole basis for the unafraid thing, right? It's like, it's not about being a tough guy. It's about resting in his promise. It's about knowing who our Father is and knowing he's going to do what he says, which is both beautiful and terrifying, because he says he's going to do some pretty gnarly things to the people that don't listen. And so I know for me in the process, very similar to what you were just saying, I shared a lot of things that I saw as vital things that needed to be discussed, and they were, and we discussed them. But I was very careless because of my, I don't know if you want to call it like my naivete, or if you want to call it like maybe just immaturity in my walk, in my relationship with the Holy Spirit. But I wasn't very responsible with the way that I delivered that stuff. And that is, in fact, in part anyways, due to the monetization of the videos, and due to the fact that I was getting paid for them at this particular point that I'm speaking of. And I had the mindset of fear is a choice. You can choose to be afraid if you want to, right? And I would say that to people, and I would even get frustrated with them when they would call me a fearmonger, and I'd be like, I'm not fearmongering, I'm sharing the truth. And if it makes you afraid, then that's on you. And perhaps it should make you a little bit afraid, but also you, at some point in time, you need to decide whether or not, you know, like, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about your fear? Because if I'm not scaring you, the next person's going to, especially if we're all talking about these same topics. However, I still feel the same way about delivering truth, even if it's scary or it creates fear. But I also believe now, and we talked about this in our last podcast, I have a much more loving and holistic approach with all of that, because like, and I view this the same way as like leading someone to Jesus. Okay. How irresponsible is it? And this is all I saw happening around me growing up, like by churches, pastors, people. The goal was to get people saved. The goal was to lead them to the cross. And then, all right, I got another one. We got another one. I prayed with another one. I did. Dude, that's just the beginning, man. Like, we need to be reaching people. We need to be teaching people. We need to be helping mend people. And then we need to be sending those people out with the same things. Yes, dude. Like, that is, I just got the goosebumps. Like, that is our mission. And not everybody is called to that mission. I understand that. I get that. We also know that the path is very narrow. And I believe every day that goes on at this point, we are realizing just how narrow that path is, because even amongst us, even amongst the like-minded people like us, the path is narrow. And, you know, our liberties come into play. The way we spend our time comes into play. The things we choose to dwell on and talk about and focus on, it all has an impact. And so I know for me, I got so convicted right around the eclipse time, because I went hard, man, for like, I want to say like 2 weeks. I went a long time without creating any of my This World Is Not What You Think It Is series videos. And then about 2 weeks leading up to it, I'm going to be honest. I was being led by the Holy Spirit to share certain things, and I shared them, and I shared the crap out of them, and I went hard and I went deep, and a lot of them were terrifying and scary. I still have the videos on my phone, but I deleted them in their entirety from TikTok. All of them were going viral. Tons of people getting scared, tons of people, and I still believe the things that I shared. I still believe that those things were true, but I got convicted because I was not being responsible in the way that I delivered that information. It should have been an approach of, here's the information. This is why I believe you all need to know it. This is what we're going to do about it. Not this is what I think we should do about it, but like, this is what we're going to do about it. This is what I'm choosing to do about it. And so, let's pray like this, right? Or let's focus on this, and let's focus on using that information to go deeper in our faith with the Lord, and to get closer to the Holy Spirit and grow that faith. Like, it's so irresponsible, tying back to the getting people saved thing. That's just the beginning, man. I think it's so irresponsible for someone to say that they care about people or care about people's salvation, and then to like even point them slightly in the direction of the cross and then wipe their hands clear of that person. Like, or clean of that person. Like, dude, we need to be guiding them. We need to be available to those people. Especially if we prayed with them one-on-one, we need to be available to them to answer questions. We need to be letting them know, yo, your battle is just starting. Like, I hate to break it to you. You just made the best decision of your life, but like, bro, you're going to go through it now. Like, now you're good.
No, I was going to say, right? What's interesting about that is just like I think sometimes, like I said, it's when I look back and I said, if I had we're heading right up to the tribulation mindset, it made it easier because I thought, well, this is the end. So therefore, like, it's not that much further. So obviously you just have to like bear down right now and got through whatever suffering we're going to have to deal with. But I said, that's the interesting part about like the idea of the little season. There's a lot of people who say, and I'm not saying they're wrong, there's a lot of people say that, okay, so if the millennial reign is 1,000 years, the little season could be a quarter of that. And if it was around 1776, we could be coming up to the very end of it. Like, we're not that much longer. But that being said, obviously that's a guess. I know that even my friends who say that, that's a guess. So I said it's almost more frightening to know, what if God says, you got about 50 more years of this?
What
and
if,
then
man?
So then you really have to actually think like, okay, so then without knowing either way, right? You live like you're going to have to meet the Lord the next day, but you kind of live also like you do have to prepare. Yeah. And you have to take care of where you live. Obviously if I knew that Jesus was coming back or doing something tomorrow, would I clean my room today? No, I wouldn't clean my room, because I'd be like, why do I worry about those little piddly things?
She'd be on your knees crying probably for more than half of the day.
Right. Well, I mean, you wouldn't be worried. You wouldn't be. What things would you not?
But you know what I'm saying.
Which things would you be leaving undone?
Yeah.
So the point is like, if you thought about him coming back in next year versus 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and then you might actually look over your kids and saying, I'm got to make this place a little better for them. And I also think that what you kind of saying, I know it seemed like you were kind of inferring where it's like, okay, so now you've scared somebody, which like is not always bad. I mean, because some people should be afraid. I mean, I still say that. I mean, some people obviously should be afraid if they're not ready to meet God. But what do you do? Like, so what is your next? Okay, so therefore this, what do you do now? Like, so I think as Christians, we should always be able to point them to the Prince of Peace. We should always be able to point them to be able to be comforted in this time and the why. But I do think it's kind of like that. I don't know. I said I can't speak for everyone else, and I feel like that my mission, which I felt for a while, is it's just truth. It's kind of like what's true and what's not true. And I think maybe I could do a little bit more in directing toward the right path. But I always think like if you're on the path of truth, then Jesus is at the end of it. And if you're willing,
the bottom line.
If you're willing, But sometimes I probably do. It's like where I probably share stuff about the little C's, and I'm sure a lot of people, you guys do too. It breaks people's world to realize that Jesus already came back. So is it okay to just break somebody's world and then just kind of walk away, or should you have to be where they're ready when they say, "Well, now what?" Well, I feel like you have to. I feel like as a Christian, as somebody who loves somebody, you have to be able to say, "Here's what now. Like here's how we walk. Here's how we go forward from here."
And that right there pulls us back to the importance of having a personal relationship of intimacy and viewing our relationship with the Father like a marriage. Like that is critical in anyone's faith. Like at whatever stage they're at, that is the thing that I try to stress on people and to help. I can be really intense. And so I've got to be careful with different people because everybody's different and we all view things differently. And like what works for you may not work for me. And the method that works for you in terms of like penetrating your heart and speaking to your heart directly, it's not going to be the same for you as it is for most people. I know that I can create content that will scare people enough to want to DM me and talk about Jesus. I know that I can. I've done it. And I know that I could get off of here and make a video tonight and do exactly that. And it would end up with me having that conversation with people. The problem with that is that people will have this intense encounter and they'll be authentic and we'll have time together. We'll pray. And then 2 days are going to go by, 4 days, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks. That intensity's gone. They're not scared anymore. There's nothing scary in the news. There's nothing scary. So do I just continue perpetuating different types of fear to keep people in that mindset? I don't want to live like that. Personally, for me, I don't want to live like that. That's stressful. Yeah. So like you said, the bottom line is we've got to prepare. We've got to live responsibly as if things are going to continue going on for days, months, and years. But
right. Well, it's almost like the idea if you scared somebody with the eclipse, right? Like that. Oh gosh, what's going to happen April 8th? What's going to happen April 8th? And then you get somebody who falls down on their knees and prays to God to save them from whatever is going to happen April 8th. April 8th comes and goes.
Well, so now what? Right?
So what if that person actually takes a second look at that and says, "Hey, nothing ever even happened. So did I even need to be saved?" So I think that there's a pretty good quote, and I'm not even sure who said it, but they were saying, whatever you save somebody with, it's like that's what basically you hook them with. It's kind of like whatever you offer them. So that's why you see some people get like the easy beliefism. They might believe in whatever they're being sold. So it's like if you sold them with part of the truth, well, maybe that's what they'll continue to believe versus somebody who's actually got them the correct way where they get understanding through the whole thing where it's like, yeah, I went to, like I said, I grew up in the church. So I went to as a teenager, went to those Acquire the Fire. And I forgot what some of those other things were called. You'd go into these places and it would be like a fun rock concert. And then eventually they'd be like, you guys, if you don't know Jesus today, you guys are going to burn in hell. And it's like, who wants to raise their hand? Who doesn't want to go to hell? And so everybody's raising their hand because obviously anybody with any mind, any brains would say, choose heaven or hell. It's funny that is actually as simple as it's as simple as it is. But but when you're presented with that in that way, with the music and the way that it's everything's going toward that, then obviously you're led by your emotions in that moment, and it might be obviously there's things that stick from those days, I'm sure, but I would say overall it's kind of like the Billy Graham stuff. Is that really how much did that really help? You getting the numbers up real high, but how many disciples came out of those places?
Good
versus, question. Those altar calls. So, I think it's in the same way we can be doing the same thing where I guess it's very easy when we're on these platforms that we can kind of just dump out of it, especially when it's like a 1 minute, 2 minute video, just dump it out there. And I'm making a new video today and I'm not even reading I mean, let's be honest, guys. If you have a 1 million view video, you ain't even reading the comments anymore.
You can't.
It's too much. It's too much. So like, you don't like, how much do we even follow up on?
Or the followers, because you're getting thousands of followers a day when that happens.
Right. Well, yeah, you're getting DM like crazy. And it's like, guys like Aaron and I, we are one guy. We don't have help making videos.
Yeah.
We literally just make them ourselves. And we go day jobs and do all the things we have to do. So when you see 5,000 comments in a video and you're like, well, I'm not looking at that one anymore. It's like, I'm moving on. And I think that you could, but if that's where somebody's actually getting their news or they're going to get fed, which that's really scary. Somebody's going to learn about God from TikTok, and then they're going from one creator to the next who that's what they're all doing. Yeah. Like, I think that like, don't ever feel bad about asking the person you follow, even if you like them, for the receipts on the things they're saying.
Yes.
Like hold
no one should ever be offended by you asking that.
Well, and if they get mad when you ask them where they got the information from,
there's your answer.
Well, there, yeah, like I said, I mean, I always say that, like, the truth does not mind explaining it to you. And, unless obviously you guys, you can see how people be antagonized.
How you ask is important.
Yeah. And obviously when they're I understand the difference between somebody who's asking me a legitimate question versus somebody who's trying to trap me and then try to move the goalpost later
or something.
I'm not going to entertain it. I feel like I'm not saying I'm like Jesus, but I know how when Jesus was like, when the Pharisees tried to trap him, how he answered them versus when somebody actually asked him a question and he was patient with them.
Yeah.
So I think for us, like, like the real problem is like, if it's Don Lemon, you're going to be skeptical of everything he says, even if, like, he doesn't say a lot of true things, but he'll say some things that are true and you won't even believe it. But then you have people who are truthers and you're never skeptical of the craziest crap they say. I think that the one thing that I feel like that God has given me, even before I got in this, I've always been very skeptical of everybody.
Oh yeah, dude, it's hard for me to trust anyone or anything.
Right, but I mean, I think that's the way to be when you're like that. Why should I trust you? So knowing that like Paul says that the devil can appear as an angel of light, so it should be no great mystery or wonder that he could disguise himself as a minister of righteousness. So the person you got to question the most is the person who is claiming to speak for of the Lord on the benefit of like what's going to happen and like act like they're prophets. Those are the kind of people that like the Bereans. When Paul's saying all these things, you're saying, here, write that down. I'm going to look that up later. And then you look it up and you say, was it right or was it incorrect? And if the guy's incorrect enough, where you're just like, call him out. What does he say? I think that at the end of the day, we want the truth. And I think that like, as guys like, Aaron and I, like, we want to be able to be vocal about these things. It's tough because like I'm a kind of guy, and I know I've got criticized on this platform in the past for not being so quick to say somebody has ill intent. I think we like even the Tucker Carlson thing. We talked all about Tucker Carlson, me and Paul. Our conclusion was obviously don't trust him. I mean, obviously that's how we make thumbnails. Should we trust Tucker Carlson? Obviously the answer is no. Do not trust JT. Do not trust Tune Thy Heart. Like you can listen or trust but verify. Don't be naive. Don't be naive.
Yeah, pray about everything, man.
Don't be naive. But I think the main thing is like that there's a point where we want to believe people. But I do think that like when you're seeking the truth, don't go to me. Go straight to the source. Go read your Bible. Be praying all the time. And I think that's why like that. As somebody who's already skeptical of people, the more I read my Bible, I would always be like, well, where does it say that?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you getting that from? So I would say I already know what's true now. And I'm not saying I know what's all true around the whole world, but like I can say, well, that doesn't square with this. So where do you know? And obviously, people who are obviously well read in their Bibles and they actually believe what they're saying, they're not going to be upset when you ask them that.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Versus people are like when you're accusatory, it's a little different. But I mean,
they should be excited when somebody asks with a genuine, like when somebody asks me or challenges me with a genuine heart, dude, I get excited, man. I'm like, let me tell you, like, let me show you how I came to this conclusion. I think I just cut you off though.
No, I was going to ask you. So where do you think that like, have you thinking like, so the possibility, I know that we're kind of on the same page as far as like that with the realization of looking at the end time, the modern futurist eschatology versus what if this stuff already happened? Like, how do you, has that changed the way you've seen things versus like, if we're not heading up to like directly to a mark of the beast, has that changed the way you like presented the content where you're thinking like, oh, wow. Yeah.
So yes, it has. I want to say though that like I've always tried to present my content from the perspective of you need Jesus now.
Mm-hmm.
Like regardless of where we're at and where we're going, you can't afford to go another day without Jesus. Like
today is the day of salvation.
Correct. That is my stance, and that will always be my stance because you literally just don't know. And so for me, I did go through a time where I also believed, we were at the end times and that prophecy was being fulfilled and that like all of those things were coming true and we were living through the book of Revelation, right? And then, but like on the same hand, I was already hyper aware that like every one of like our ancestors thought the same thing. Firstly,
right. Mm-hmm. I used to not think they were wrong because I thought, that you're always supposed to think it's the end times.
Right.
That made sense to me, right?
Yeah, sure. And that's not a bad mindset to have as long as you learn how to control that and you find your peace in Jesus. But so then it became like, because I think I told you this, like in my research of like all of the old structures and Tartaria and the mud floods and like all of that stuff, one of the most fascinating parts for me were the statues and the coins that they found and the historical sites that had the eyes in front of them and the J's in front of the numbers, which like we don't, those are really hard to find now. If you've never done that research, like it's really hard to find any information on that now. But I remember like coming to my own conclusion that there was about 1,000 years that was like not accounted for or like unexplained or that didn't make a lot of sense. And then going through all of that and learning what I've learned about frequencies, learning about the star forts and the star cities and like all of that stuff, like it became very clear to me that like there was more going on. Like there had to be more going on. Like those structures could not have been built with human hands or with like, basic human technology. The missing time, all of that kind of stuff. I always felt kind of like in my gut that like what we were experiencing with regard to Revelation was more like a playbook than it was more like a playbook than it was like things actually panning out. And there's a handful of things that took place to make me feel like that. But like a few of the prophecies that like people claimed were coming true were like as simple as like the World Health Organization or the United Nations holding a meeting and then putting like an image on the wall that represented like one of the beasts in Revelation or something. Like it seemed so intentional that they were trying to elicit reactions from the evangelicals and the people that were trying to push the end times pre-tribulation rapture type stuff. Like so all of that to say, my approach became not talking about the end times, like pretty quickly. And so I don't spend a lot of time talking about that because from my perspective, we can slice that a number of different ways, but it just led to more arguments than anything. Trying to convince people that either, yes, we're in this section, no, we're not in this section. Yes, maybe this is possible. Maybe it is the little season. Maybe it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, rather than go that route, I have found for me that it's been more beneficial to open up the dialogue, the salvation dialogue, simply by saying, observe where we're at. Look at where we're at. Look at what's taking place, and like realize that like bad things are happening. Bad things are coming. And there's so many gears turning right now that are all bad that like it's just a matter of time before they all catch and bad things start to happen, like especially in America. So like that's kind of been my approach, like if that answers your question. And so that's go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I didn't mean to distract you too much with the
you totally did, dude. Like I started talking and I brain farted like 4 times. I'm like,
I know.
I want to hear what you have to say about this stuff.
No, I just put it up because we were talking about like the end times, and I was like, have you ever seen this? Have you ever seen these pictures? I saw them today, and I mean, and obviously I was maybe too quick to share them. But look, so obviously this is like the gate in Iraq, like this real famous one. This is an 1850 right here. And so look at the dirt. Look how tall this thing is.
Yeah, dude.
And it's totally under the ground. I mean, like,
and if we're assuming that guy is like an average 5.5 foot tall, then like, what even is that, dude? That's 25 feet tall.
I mean, it looks like those I guess I would call them cherubs, maybe, are about 12 feet tall, maybe. And then so it's easily twice that tall, more than twice that tall. So it's like, it's like 25 feet tall. And then so the dirt's another feet. So it's like the dirt's like 26 feet tall. Like, what is that? I mean, like,
I'm curious to know what's behind all of that. Like, there's obviously a tunnel there.
Well, I think it's just dug. I think they're excavating it. So the point is like this is somewhere in Iraq, and this is literally under the earth. And I said, it's quite unbelievable. I mean, it's quite unbelievable when you kind of see this kind of stuff. To me, it's like, this is like frightening and awesome at the same time, because you're like, did you see the podcast, Aaron, that we did about? It was about, has Judgment Day already came? And me and Vitaly were showing these temples. Like, there was a temple, I think it was in Sardis, Turkey, and there's like a big column, and the column's just like this. It looks like a 20-foot column, and it's under the earth.
I didn't see that one.
But all these biblical locations are like under the ground now. And
when you referred to, I did see a video you made where you referred to a couple. He said that they were going to be gone and decimated, and they are.
Well, right. Well, I think that's the thing where like that. I guess this should give everyone pause. That I feel like that there's that scripture when like, I know what you're saying, we need Jesus now. I remember I made a video with that. I was talking with Contend with the Faith, Ricardo, and I was saying, like, that was the emphasis for the apostles when they were saying, you need Jesus now because judgment's coming. And I do kind of feel like that I've started to pivot a little bit, where there's an example, and I'll give you an example from Ezekiel 30, chapter 30. It's about the day of the Lord coming to Egypt. And it mentions a bunch of cities. The day of the Lord came there. Like, I'm confident in that. But what's interesting is that it mentions Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. So it's like, I'm starting to wonder that like the day of the Lord is maybe not as specific as everyone thinks it is. That the day when the Lord shows up, it's maybe not one return. It's like he comes in judgment versus different places. So,
yeah.
Do you think of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is that when God decides there's no righteous men left, or like there's a certain amount, maybe he brings out the righteous ones and he sends in judgment, and that's when Judgment Day comes.
Yeah.
versus, and then so you see examples of this all around the world where you think like these were super advanced societies, they had all the things, and then one day God decides judgment's coming, and like look, I mean, obviously this had to be that kind of earthquake where they call it liquefaction, where like the soil liquefaction, where it's like literally like quicksand, because like where's the mud come from? Where does the dirt come from to cover this stuff? And it's like, yeah, like I mean, obviously at some point judgment's coming,
but it would make sense though. It would make sense though that historically speaking, because we already know that things happen in cycles just like the seasons. We know that for a fact. And we know that like it would make sense that nations get judged at different times for different purposes. And I think that makes absolute sense to me. And I think that like one of the things that is terrifying for Christians to consider with the whole short season thing is that if that all did take place, that means that like all of the teachings they got from their Sunday school teacher or their Sunday, whatever, where like there was the teachings about the rapture, the pre-tribulation rapture, and all of those other things, like they got to go out the window. They got to go out the window, and you've got to start thinking about things completely different. What's that?
That's Sardis. That's the church that's where Sardis in the book of Revelation, the church of Sardis.
And how old is that picture?
I think this is from the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s.
So that like the only way that something like that is accomplished is by like earthquakes, heavy flooding. Like, I mean, you can imagine like the tectonic plates. We have maps, if they're accurate, of all of the plates across the world, right? And so like it wouldn't be that hard for an entire country to be decimated and uplifted and buried 10, 15 feet below the ground if the earthquakes hit hard enough and for long enough. Like there's historical accounts of that.
You know what's wild is I started to wonder, and Alpha Talks was the first guy who to bring this up that I had ever heard say this, saying, because I always thought the idea of Pangea was dumb, because I remember Kent Hovind saying that the continents are not like lily pads; they're not floating around on the water. Like they're already connected. There's just chasms of space in between them, and obviously it's filled in with water. But then he basically so Alpha Talks was saying that I think that Pangea could have been a realistic concept, but maybe it's more recent than it was. And if there was a Day of the Lord event that was obviously worldwide, is that what could have done? I mean, when you look at the level of like, how do these things get buried like that? And it's like everywhere in the whole world. And that's what I'm saying. Like, and I think that's a video that I might make in the next day or two. And I was saying like, so if you guys have not heard of Jimmy Corsetti, he's got a big YouTube channel called Bright Insight, and he does a lot of lost civilization stuff. I don't believe he's a Christian, but he kind of like talks about this stuff like Graham Hancock does. And he did a video about Göbekli Tepe, which supposedly is the oldest megalithic site. It's buried under the ground. Well, they started excavating it, I think, about 15 years ago. They've only excavated 5% of it. And then he said that the World Economic Forum has prevented them from excavating any further. And so, like, obviously, this is a big travesty. It's kind of like the Indiana Jones stuff. That stuff belongs in a museum. We need to get to all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what the funny part about that is not quite that. It's the story of that. Why is this place buried under the ground? And then you get even those kind of people who claim to be of the truth. Well, it's speculated that they buried their own temple complex. And you're like, that is so mind-numbingly stupid that they say the same thing about the Aztecs, that the Spanish were coming in and they decided to go bury some of their temples. Who does that?
And how, right? And like, how long would that take? Like, what was the method they used? Like, give us more information on that. Like, right?
Can you imagine if you knew an invading army was coming and then your leader said,
bury the city,
get a shovel and go bury your house. And you'd be like, how about I take this shovel and go hit you with it? Or maybe how we start sharpening these things into plowshares and knives and swords and get ready to fight. Like, what
Right.
kind of more useless, like thing to do would be to bury your stuff instead of actually either just getting out of there, if obviously they're that terrifying, taking as much as you can. So the point being was there's stuff buried all around the whole world. Again, like that. Do you think that somebody buried that pillar, or do you think that was an act of God?
Well, and then there's a whole other side of this too, which is a lot of people believe that the controls to all of this stuff is in Antarctica. That there are basically like there's a control system down there that controls the all of this stuff, meaning like earthquakes can be initiated like manually.
I've never heard the Antarctica theory. Let's
really?
Let's
Okay.
go with that. Yeah, like explain that to us.
Well, so when I was and I'm not saying that like I subscribe to any of this, but like I know that when there was a lot more information on the internet 5 or 6 or 7 years ago than there is right now. Like so many things have gotten scrubbed and erased. I've even had things that I found that I took screenshots of and saved videos of on my phone and on my digital devices that are straight up gone. And like Google Drive that I had videos and stuff in, and they're just gone. Like flat Earth stuff, all of that kind of stuff.
You're saying that they scrub stuff off the devices you have?
I'm saying, and this is the only thing I can say with 100% certainty, I absolutely had content in my Google storage that I did not delete. That is not only no longer on the internet in the places that it once was, or videos that were once on YouTube, but it's also no longer in my Google Drive that I did not delete. That's all I can say. I can't say who did it or why or how or what, but like when you understand like where technology comes from and what it is and like who controls it and who the prince of the air and all of that stuff is, like it's not really that far-fetched. But I'm not about to get into a conspiracy with like to say who did it and why and when and like who's responsible. Like all I know is that a lot of my stuff is gone.
You remember that scene in Fight Club where they go into like it might have been a Blockbuster video back in those days, and they have that kind of, I'm not sure, it was some kind of magnetic device, and they were just scanning it across all the
wipe the VHS tapes.
Yeah. And you're like wondering if like, could you imagine if they could send a signal out that could actually wreck our hard drives and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, yeah, for sure they could. And then there's the fact that like, I mean, it's very obvious. You look at the symbolism that Google has always used, both in the Chrome logo and in the what was it, the server that they had, or the technology they had, processor called Adreno, and like you can see the 666s in the and then what else is it? There's and then the fact that like the Gmail logo is like the Mason apron and like all of that stuff, like. So it's like, it's quite obvious. Like they know what they're doing. They've known what they're doing. Like people are just now getting uncomfortable with like, oh, they're going to have access to all of our data. They're going to be able to see all of they've had access to it. They've been able to manipulate and do whatever they want to it this entire time. They're just letting you know now that like they're going to be doing it. They're just like finally giving the heads up to the people that weren't paying attention.
Right. Well, it's always like the idea of like that. When they announce what they're going to do, they've done it for a long time at that point, like.
Yes, undoubtedly. So one of the theories was, when I was doing all of this researching, and again, this is just a theory, but that when Admiral Byrd went to Antarctica, and they went down there and they got their butts handed to them. What was that? Operation High Jump, I believe.
Yeah.
They went down there with like 5,500 troops or whatever, and they literally got their butts handed to them and smeared and came back after losing how many thousands of soldiers. They came back, and then when they eventually went back, it said that they basically met the Anunnaki there, or the fallen, right?
What did he call them? He called them like some kind of the elder race or something like that. It was some kind of like the master. You're thinking of the
master race. You're thinking of his diary from when he went to the North the North Pole.
Right. Yeah.
And went into inner Earth, went into hollow Earth, and which is a whole different topic. But they were saying that basically, like when they went down there, and they met the fallen, they met the Anunnaki or the fallen angels or the, this realm's controllers, so to speak, that like they came across them and their quantum computers and like basically all of their mechanisms that they use to control, we can call them levers if we want to control the earth, the things that control, the storms in the ocean and the earthquakes and the things that we consider acts of God. And so that's why I brought up what you said earlier, because there's a lot of people these days that say, oh, well, if anything happens or if this happens or if that happens, it's not going to be God that does it. It's going to be the elite, right? Or it's going to be like HARP technology, or it's going to be this and that's responsible for that taking place or this taking place. And like my stance on all of that is, dude, we could go through the what if game all day long. Like at the end of the day, scripture tells us that he is sovereign. And so like, regardless of who's flipping the levers or hitting the switches or whatever the case is, nothing happens without his permission. I mean, look at Job, right? Like nothing happens without his permission, without his okay. And so if something like that is allowed to happen, it's because it was ordained. It's because they were given the permission to do that. So it doesn't matter how. I'm
of the belief that many people in this community give the controllers of the elite too much credit.
I completely agree. And I was once one of those people.
For what goes on, because it's funny, even like to something simple as like that, like I was just thinking out loud, talking about voting. I said, obviously, guys, I'm not promoting any certain candidate. Obviously, if you vote for the other guy that I wasn't talking about, then obviously you don't follow me anyways. But that being said, that like voting doesn't matter. It matters. They want you to do this. Oh, you're playing into your hands if you do this. And you're like, so every which way, like they win is what you're trying to say. Like
they're behind every single option.
Well, it's kind of like the idea where I said, okay, so when 2020 went the way it did, and then millions of us woke up and started speaking the truth, did they want that too? Like, you can't you don't want to give them that much credit where like maybe they made the calculus that some people are going to reject the programming and then they're going to have to deal with a little bit of fallout from that, but then it's worth it in the long run. But I do think that like when you look at the way things have been, which I would say is, I'm not sure if it's just because I've been paying attention more. I think it's pretty obvious. Obviously I'm paying attention and they are sloppy. The people who are running this place are sloppy. They're not all that great. We know that the devil and his angels, his demons are not as perfect as God, very clearly. He's not omnipotent.
Bro, we've been given authority over them. All we've got to do is walk in the truth.
He cannot be everywhere at once. So yeah, like sometimes I think it is like the God allows it to be a total crap show, the way they run it. And it's like, you're still not paying attention. You don't still think that they're perfect. Like, no, they're not doing everything correct. So I would say that I think there's a level of, obviously, this is speculation. This is not me making any kind of clear thing. I think they have a level of weather manipulation. Obviously, I think that's not even getting out on a limb at all. Can they make earthquakes? Actually, there was a Freedom of Information Act about some congressional report saying that this is 1970s, and they were talking about weather manipulation, and there was actually talking about they could inject certain kinds of. This were scientists saying this. I'm not saying they're doing this, but they could inject certain chemicals into the earth, and it would cause earthquakes.
Why not? That makes sense.
But I would say to the level of the picture I just showed you, I don't think so. I don't think you could sink a temple like that, like the thing you saw when I showed that picture from Iraq. I think that's something that God does, or maybe it's possible that God allowed the devil when he was released to do that. Or there's an accounts out there that say that the mud flood was Armageddon, and maybe this stuff was not as long ago as we think it was. Which the Bible does talk about a great earthquake like the earth has never seen when all the stuff happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like evidence. I mean, especially when you think about like some of the places it's calling out, that it makes sense that they're under the ground. But again, if I said that if the day of the Lord is not isolated to one day, it's the day of judgment for this city.
When that time comes for that city.
Yes, it could.
Or
Yeah,
nation.
it could. I mean, so obviously we're trying to piece these things together. All we can see is like some of the earliest pictures we have of everything under the ground. I think here's a homework assignment. It's actually not homework. This is fun. You can go look up around America, the Great Fire of blah, 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 but go start looking up, think of ancient places and look about and type in excavated. And then you put like 1800s and you can go look into Rome and like, there's like the Colosseum and there's dirt all around it. And you're like, everything that's like been a historical monument basically had a bunch of dirt around it at some
Even
point.
the White House, dude.
Yeah.
There's even pictures out there of the White House being like basically dug out.
I need to look up some.
Not founded, but like found, like actually found. So on that note, we have to remember first how much we don't know, right? Like I have to constantly remind myself how much I don't know. And the more that I learn, the more I realize that I know absolutely nothing. And I'm being so for real, like, because there is just so much we don't know, right? We were raised being taught that like the center of the earth is the hottest, and that obviously on a round earth or a sphere earth, that there's magma and all of that other stuff. But then like at the same time, we were also taught that like oceans get colder and colder the deeper that you go. So like the fact that like most of us didn't put that stuff together and like understand that like that doesn't make sense, that doesn't go with the other thing that you taught us, shows us that there's so much that we don't know. But one thing I just want to say about like the earthquakes and all of that, remember the last time we talked about the organs and we talked about frequency and we talked about the technology to be able to like blast a kidney stone out of your kidneys. That technology exists. Okay. So it would make absolute sense that they've got the technology to use sonar to blast the ground or to blast structures that are far underneath the ground, to create or cause an earthquake. I also think that it's highly possible that the land and everything that we live on is way more mechanical than we know or than we realize or understand.
What do you mean, like terraformed?
Meaning like possibly that in some places, but like meaning that like, what if there are controls somewhere for all of the fault lines?
Bro, look at that picture. You see that picture of Kansas City?
That's crazy, dude.
Like, what is that, man?
That's crazy.
We're led to believe that those are new buildings.
And then there's like the
look at this one.
I can't see which one. I can't see where you.
Can you see this?
I can't see your mouse.
Oh, for some reason it's not sticking on there. This one right over here, the one on the far right, where you're like,
yeah, that's the one I'm looking at.
We're like the buggies and everything. I mean, it's like, is that not just the trippiest looking thing you've ever seen,
dude? So many of those old photos are so trippy. So like, and then of course with like the new AI technology, we see some of these photos, dude. They're like some of those new photos that look old are like completely indistinguishable from some of the actual like old photos. But going back to talking about like the controls and levers or whatever of the earth and whether or not earthquakes can be controlled, like what about like the maps of California just a couple hundred years ago, where like historically speaking, if you look at it, like it would appear as though California goes back and forth between being an island and then being connected to the United States. Like in cycles, like, so for however long it's an island and then however long it's back to the United States and it's a part of the United States again. It's not an island anymore. Like there's just so much we don't know, man.
No, I mean, I think that, here, show that right there.
I think that's like a 1700s map. If
there's quite a few maps that show that. I mean, I think that's like the whole crazy part. Yeah, that was another thing that Alpha Talks did. It's like like how could they draw America so accurate like in that map and then have it as an island? And you know what they say? What is it? Death Valley is below sea level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How does that make sense, right?
Well, it makes sense if it was once under the sea.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's the only way it makes sense. Like that's the only way it makes sense. Well, and then even talking about like all of the stuff that we've talked about this multiple times, where like between northern Arizona, Utah, all of that stuff, you see like, dude, you can see the water line. You can see the water line, you know, on some of these mountains and some of these different places, and you'll also find fossils and all of that stuff. So it's like, was that the Great Flood that caused that? Like,
I don't think so. I don't
right?
think so. That's where I'm coming to the conclusion after like doing that. And if you guys watched the dinosaur podcast, we were talking about it. I was saying that if you see what the science says about fossil creation, it mentions that something has to be buried rapidly with mud. And I was like, huh. So if there was something that happened 200 years ago with lots of mud, is that possibly where all the fossils came from? And I said, isn't it kind of funny to think that even based, like this is based on the narrative we have, is that they didn't start finding dinosaur fossils until the 1800s. So what if the mud flood was the late 1700s, early 1800s, and they started finding fossils because they can be created much faster than, and they said, actually, you know, like I think Alpha Talks brought up the point that there was a fossilized cowboy boot.
That's crazy.
Things can become fossils much quicker. So obviously cowboy boot, Old West, it makes sense that, these things are actually more recent. And it really has something to do with obviously the mud and the pressure and how quickly they're buried is what creates fossils, and not obviously a million years.
So then that leads us to the next, this is a perfect segue to what I was texting you about the other day, about the short season and about the big L being released or unchained, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
mm-hmm.
what if, so like, let's take the Statue of Liberty, for instance, which by now almost everybody's seen or heard the comparisons between that painting and the Statue of Liberty, and the it's obvious, like the similarities in the way that it was created and the way that the statue looks. And then you see the chains at the bottom. Why? What's the significance of showing the Statue of Liberty in the chains if it hadn't happened yet? Like, why? Because we all know that, like, that's the God that they serve. We know that. They make it very clear. When I say they, I'm talking about, the secret societies and the elite. And why would they be celebrating a time of their savior, their God, being chained if it hadn't happened yet, unless that's not what it is? What if it is a memorial to celebrate the chains being broken off? And what if the date given on that tablet, July 4th, 1776, what if that is the date that he was loosed?
And then
all of these things took place shortly after that.
There's some weird stuff with the, like I said, I think the chain thing is very freaky. I think another thing that's kind of freaky is the whole idea that this thing is like literally on a star fort too, which again is like a different level of it. Like nobody even notices the base of it. It's a star fort. Like, isn't that weird? Yeah. And so like the chain on the ankle, then you go over to this famous statue of, who, and he's got a chain around his ankle.
So it's like, are they trying to say that he's, what are they trying to say? Like, what are they trying to say with that chain? I highly doubt that, like, the God that they serve would be demonstrated with a chain. Like, why would they celebrate that? But then I also hear, Christians saying, why would you celebrate, the cross? Because that's the symbol of death for Jesus. But it's also the symbol of so much more. So, like, it begs the question though, like, What if the Declaration of Independence and all of that stuff is just not true? What if all of that's a farce? What if all of that stuff is not what happened? What if that's the day that he was loosed? What if that's the day that he made his own declaration over the United States, right? And
Well, is it interesting the comparison of this statue, which obviously is very obviously the same, the Colossus of Rhodes?
yeah, dude, it's like
Literally,
it's identical.
if you look it up, it's the exact same size as the Statue of Liberty too.
Dimensions and all.
Yes, it's the same height. I mean, so that's the sun god Helios, Apollo, Lucifer, the Statue of Liberty. And it is insane. Why does that statue have a chain around its ankle if it's the Statue of Liberty?
What are people saying? Because you're way more tapped into the little season or the short season stuff. What is the consensus in that community?
Well, I think most people, it makes sense to them. I feel like the little season community is pretty good for it. Like, this is a idea. This makes sense. Obviously it makes sense that date is so significant. I made one of my biggest TikToks from the beginning was about the Revelation 9/11, Apollo, Statue of Liberty. I recognize that's not a woman, that's a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's sort of interesting, I had a chat last week, and I had this account now, Leaving Babylon, and she had a video about that, and she was pointing to that movie. Do you ever see the movie The Fifth Element?
It's been so long, man.
But yes. I hadn't seen it in a long time. But what's very fascinating with that movie was that there was this I forgot what they call it. It was some kind of like the angelic race. I mean, it wasn't angelic, but it was something about like the heavenly race.
Mm-hmm.
And this being was mostly dead or something like that. They only regained a fraction of this being, and they used some kind of regenerator, some kind of like 3D printing with the DNA. And that was what created the girl, Mila Djokovic, whatever, in the movie.
Okay.
And so the point was, the guy who was kind of like the priest guy, and he knew who that was. I'm butchering the way I'm explaining.
It's fine. I don't care about the plot. I just want to hear.
What they were saying was like, he was surprised. Oh, it's a woman now, and it was almost like there was this angelic being who was a man and now was a woman. And I was like, oh man, that kind of makes sense, that like the gender inversion of all these like male heroes. Even like I said, it's funny because like in the Solomon, actually, the Testament of Solomon, the prince of demons in that is Beelzebul, and he's related to the star called Hesperus. And so Hesperus in the Greek is Venus. And so Venus is typically portrayed as a woman, as we would know. But not in this testament, it was. And it was like, even like Ashtoreth in the Bible is a queen of heaven. But Ashtoreth, you can see it like a variation of the name is a man. And it's like, it looks like the same being. Where it doesn't take much to put a little lipstick on old Lucifer in there. He's kind of a pretty man.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense that is this kind of showing like the devil is out, and he's in disguise. He's in disguise now.
It would also make sense of like how inversion is almost like the price to pay for those followers too. That's why, you see it so much in Hollywood, and you see it in politics, and you see it like all over the place. Like, has anybody gone back and looked at pictures of Barbara Bush that grew up knowing Barbara Bush was George Bush's wife? Have you gone back and looked at pictures of Barbara Bush?
What about isn't it Macron's wife?
Well, that one for sure. That's the new one. That's the new one. But like, I know some of this stuff I just literally can't talk about. But like, I know that like the inversion side of things is the sacrifice you make at certain levels in Hollywood.
Well, it sure seems like that. I mean, it feels like a sacrifice for the celebs as their children. They sacrifice them for, because they've all got one now, right?
Well, and in
It's
a
like
lot of
it's so common.
cases, it is very common. And in a lot of cases also, this is something a lot of people don't know. And that's that parents would get their children involved in Hollywood on a certain capacity, and their child would be inverted, and they would become a prominent figure in whatever capacity, whether it's sports or music or acting or whatever, and the parents would reap the benefits.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean.
You never even know about the parent. You never hear about the parent. They're living their best life with all of this money, and then their daughter or son is the slave that's been
Moloch stuff.
That's been but what I'm saying is they're still alive.
I know, but it's like to me, it's kind of like in some kind of way they just what's interesting to go back to like the comic books. That's like how it's presented in those Marvel comics was that Jack Parsons, Howard Stark, it's kind of like the same character. So Tony Stark's dad, it looks just like Howard Stark. And so in the comic books, Howard Stark sold his son's soul to the devil, which was Tony Stark. And then so Tony Stark, Iron Man, becomes the Antichrist in the comic books because his dad
walks in on them doing a ritual or something, right? Yeah, like in the comics.
Yeah, like they come out and it's like the straight up like the robes and everything doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
And so he sold his son's soul, not himself, which is like, oh, whoops, plot twist. These wicked people are more wicked than you even thought, like that they have no regard for their own children.
So much more, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like there's obviously something to that, but I mean, it's like, but I thought it's interesting, even like like I said, in the Marvel movies, you have Captain Marvel. So in the original comic books, Captain Marvel was a man, right? So now,
right.
And now in the current movies, in the comic books too, Captain Marvel is now a woman, and Captain Marvel wears the Venus symbol on her chest,
right?
So Venus, and that's why like people say like Lucifer is, it's like the Day Star, son of the dawn, and some people call like the light bringer is Venus because Venus is the brightest star in the sky. Well, other than the sun and the moon, it's the brightest thing in the whole night sky,
right?
Altogether in the sky altogether. And so a lot of times Venus is what's bringing up the sun. It's like what you see at the end, the morning star. It's like pulling up the sun. And so Venus, maybe back in the day, was represented by a man, and now in the modern age, is represented by a female.
Dude, this stuff, all of this stuff goes so deep, and it goes down so many different facets in so many different directions, and it's so easy to get lost in the sauce, so to speak, by going down some of these different avenues. And like, to kind of bring it all back to what we were initially talking about, like it's so easy to lose your way on the discovery for truth. It's so easy to forget that, like, because I wholeheartedly believe this. I wholeheartedly believe that every single rabbit hole leads you back straight to the feet of Jesus. Every single one. The problem is just that most people, they don't go deep enough down the rabbit holes. And some of them are terrifying to go down, but like, what I don't understand is why anybody would want to start going down some of these paths to learning the truth, but then like they're just okay learning just a few of these things and going, okay, yep, I'm good. Like I know the earth's flat. I know that like, these people are corrupt. I know about this secret society, that secret society. I know about this and that. It's like, don't you want to know why these people believe in the spirit realm? Don't you want to know why these people have their rituals and their seances and why they're sacrificing things to gods that we cannot see? Like, why don't you want to know that? Like, why don't you want to know why these people that get involved in witchcraft cannot touch the children of Jesus? Why do you not want to know about that? Like, why do you not want to know the rules on how all of that works and why it is that way? And at the end of the day, it's because people don't want to change, man.
Yeah.
They don't want to change. They don't want to give up their we spend so much of our lives running from our childhood, running from the trauma and running from the things we wish wouldn't have happened the ways that they did, trying to deal with why we're this way or why we're that way and blaming it on other people or our parents until we get to the age where hopefully we do the inner work, and even if you're not born again, you at least do the work deep enough to know that like at a certain age, it's our responsibility to deal with whatever has been given to us, whatever took place, whether our parents were doing the best that they could or whether they weren't. But like at the end of the day, you're never going to get to the end of that rabbit hole and discover these things and discover the importance of having intimacy with Jesus if you don't ask yourself the hard questions. And I think the reason why we're seeing so many truthers on TikTok and other platforms intentionally sharing things that they know are absolute BS for the sake of making money is because they haven't sat with themselves and asked themselves those hard questions. They haven't really sat back and gone, why am I really doing this?
Right. Or they don't ask themselves that enough.
Correct.
Because I think it's a constant thing.
It's
like
daily.
search out your heart. Like, Lord, search out my heart for like, am I doing this for the right reasons? And I do think that it is like, it's a, I think sometimes obviously, we are going pretty deep when we start talking about like the reasons why they do anything, the reasons why they're showing inversions, and like, yeah, those are kind of like, I mean, how important is that? I mean, obviously, it's interesting to speculate, but I think
but it's a sacrifice to their God.
Oh no, I know, I agree, but I'm just saying, like, I think
I'm saying the why though is people don't ask themselves why. It's that.
Oh, but I'm saying, like, the people that are doing what we're doing and like they're searching, they're going deep down the rabbit hole, and it's like, I think sometimes it is like that. You can go down there searching, and you can lose yourself down there. Like you can
absolutely
you can forget why you were even looking, because I think that's like the people who they get disillusioned with all of it,
or depressed.
Where they could find out, wow, like they start to question things. Actually, I was working on a video today about like that. I often get asked, are there books removed from the Bible? And I'm like, yeah. The original Bible had 88 books, so now it's got 66. And I always try to comfort people by saying that all the things in the Bible are true. There's things that are true that are not in the Bible.
Correct.
If that makes you feel better. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not saying that there's something that you have to know that's not in there. But I'm also saying that, do you want to know more about what God says? There's more books out there if you want to read them.
Yeah.
So there's some people could use that as like a black pill. Oh, well, how can we even know then? Like, well, maybe it's the short season, so maybe the devil's corrupted everything. People who say that want to believe that because they want to go do their own thing. Yeah. They want to be less accountable. And I think that's like, yeah, again, it's always coming back to the why. The why are we continuing to go dig? I think that as somebody like me, I can only speak for myself, is the why do I want to know? For one, I'm curious. For two, I do think that like these conversations that all lead back to like, weighing out what's true versus what we know, and speculating, and maybe we could get an idea of how much longer this is, what the plan is, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess it's kind of like, I'd rather do this than do it by myself, because I think at this point it would be very difficult for me to completely shut down this part of my brain that's researching this stuff
it's impossible now. At this point. Like this is like, I firmly believe that like us talking about the things we're talking about now, regardless of the story of how you got to where you are and how I got to where I'm at, it's very obvious that like we're just wired this way. Like we've always questioned things. We've always wanted to know the deeper meanings behind things. We don't want to be deceived, most importantly, right? Like, and that's the real reason why I landed on my faith in Jesus, is not because it was forced down my throat or anything. It's because I tried all of the other doors, and it just makes the most logical sense. Like it just makes the actual most logical sense. And at first, like when I, a lot of it started out of fear, but like that righteous fear of like, oh dang, like, okay, So he really is the only way. Like he really is like the only protection we have in this realm. Like actually, like spiritually speaking, like he is the only protection that we've got in this realm, and like trying to understand that. And so I think the importance of us discussing these things now, and the importance of us continuing to discuss these things, because I'm going to continue to discuss them too, and you are. And the importance now is that like some of these things, if we can discuss them, even if we don't all come to a consensus, I learn enough about a thing for me to be able to get comfortable with adopting something as something that I choose to lean towards, and be comfortable with believing that as a thought. And ultimately, that has always brought me closer to the Holy Spirit. Ultimately, it's always increased my strength in him, my faith in him, and it's just shown his glory, right? It's just shown his majesty and his glory through that process, and brought me back to another level of reverence for him, and the way that it's all been orchestrated and the way that he works. And I just think, I just want to encourage to anybody that might see this on two perspectives. One, as a consumer of content, do not be afraid to have healthy conversations with creators about why they think the things that they think, where they got that information, especially if it's something you want to go research yourself. Be respectful in the way that you ask that stuff, please, because coming from someone that, if somebody asks something the wrong way, I'll just block them. I'm just going to be totally real. Like I don't have the time for it, man. I don't have the energy. I don't have the mental capacity for it. I'm so not on that frequency that like, if somebody comes at me with the wrong mindset or the wrong heart, like the Holy Spirit's just like, nope, don't even. And so I'll just block and move on. But like, it's important to know the whys behind that stuff. But also, like, I want to encourage the same people that consume this type of content, be very careful about who you just accept facts from. Be very careful about who you accept knowledge and information from. And if you are a believer, make absolute certain that they serve Jesus. Like, period. Like, because we can talk about God all we want, but like, which God, right? Like, we know there's one God, but according to them, there's only one God for them also. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that the God on our dollar bills that say "In God We Trust," I wholeheartedly believe that was never our God. That was never Adonai. Like, or
it's even like something like Christ consciousness, which sounds really similar to what we believe, but it's not.
It's total heresy.
It's making Jesus out to be what you want him to be, and not, it's like he's it's like, sadly, it's kind of like Talladega Nights, when it's like, I like the Christmas Jesus best.
Right.
That's a joke, but I mean, that's kind of what people do. It's like, I like the Jesus like this. This is the one I like, and this is the one I'm going to worship. But it's like, but obviously Jesus is the way he is, and we need to submit to who he is, not how we want him to be.
Absolutely, man. Well, that's the whole sanctification process, is allowing him to continue transforming us into becoming what he wants us to become, and seeing him for who he truly is during that process, not who we want him to be or who we think that he is. Like, that has to never end. That has to never end. And I just also want to say too, to any of the creators out there that might see this, you're playing a dangerous game if you're sharing things that are not truthful, and that they're not truthful, especially if you claim to be born again or filled with the Holy Spirit. I promise you right now, in fact, I pray in Jesus' name that any of those people get convicted and get absolutely put into a place of humility, in such a way that they're able to be renewed and come back and share things properly, in the right perspective, in the right way, because we need leaders that are going to be soldiers, that are going to speak in truth online and offline, in everything that they do, every single day, every night. They're going to be the same character no matter what. It's not about money. It's about salvation. It's about the truth, because we are responsible for these people and these souls that are listening to us and consuming the information that we're sharing with them. It is a great responsibility, and it's not one that should be taken lightly. So I just want to say, and I say all of that because that's exactly what happened to me. Like when I reached that point that we were talking about just before the eclipse, I kind of had the conclusion. The Holy Spirit spoke to me in many ways during prayer time on the 9th. Actually, it was April 9th that it took place. And it was kind of one of those things, like you said, like, what about the next event? And what about the next event and the next event? Like, you can't continuously be leading people to these cliffs. And then, like, even if it's all true, even if everything, because every video that I shared was not a forecast of what's going to happen on the 8th for the eclipse. I never said that. I never said this is going to happen. They were more like, when things do begin to pop off, this is how they're going to go. This is what it's going to look like. But I got so convicted that I deleted all of that content that I thought, or I should say, what happened was I sat down on the computer, and I never look at TikTok on the computer, but I sat on the computer and the Holy Spirit just had me go through all of my videos. And within the first 5 seconds, I knew whether or not they needed to be deleted, and I deleted them. And as a result, yeah, you know what? I'm not really making much on there anymore. And it is what it is. But I'm okay with it because I made an intentional choice to steer people properly. I will still talk about some of that stuff, even if it's terrifying, but I will also lead them back to the truth and facilitate something, whether it's prayer or a way to pray or a method to deal with the situation. And as a result, my views have absolutely tanked. So, I've got 140,000 whatever people following me on TikTok. But I get, on average, I mean, there's some videos I make, they sit at 500 views or 750 views for a week. And then they pop off or not pop off, but they get to like 1,000 or 1,500. I would say on average, I'm getting between 1,000 and 2,500 views per video. And that's over the course of a couple of weeks. They're not blowing up quickly. And the only things that I see, if I'm keeping it real, the only things that I see blowing up and getting catastrophically giant as far as attention goes are the things that are just absolute not true.
Yeah, garbage.
Choosing my words carefully.
Well, yeah. So I was looking at this verse,
or
and I thought
partially true.
I thought this verse was perfect for this, because I think there's a lot of people who I would say that they're Christians, but they are straying from what they should be doing. And I think when they tried to come back, here's the problem with that obviously you can be forgiven, but your name and your integrity and your reputation is much harder to bring back. And so what the wisest man ever, Solomon, said once was, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. Because your name, like I said, it's like, it's better to be like, I think that's what I always try to remember, is that I try my best to tell you when I don't know things. Mm-hmm. Because when I say I'm sure of something, I want you to believe me. And I don't want to ever lose your trust. So then one day you'll say, well, maybe he's not even telling me the truth about the things he says he's sure about. Yep. And then so when people are like, I think that's the thing, is like the level of like trying to scare you, they actually have to be more sure of things, right? And that's what those accounts do, or their dumb theories that they present as facts, just like the science does, which obviously drives me absolutely insane. Like I said, you nailed it when you were saying that we traded in like a few big news networks as fake news for like millions of fake news people, like little journalists out there, just throwing up throwing every bit of poo against the wall to find out what sticks, and it all stinks. Yeah, that's the problem. So as Christians, we should obviously. It kills me. I mean, it obviously does kill me as somebody who wants to make fun videos, make interesting videos. When somebody says, like, I'll see something on Twitter, ooh, that's an awesome connection. You're like, I'm going to make a video about that. And I go look it up. And I'm like, but it's not true. Yeah. Like they actually don't have the receipts. It's like, yeah, that's the real problem, is people will run with something they've heard without looking it up. And I've even done that too, where I made a video and I was like, I had to take it down later because I found out it wasn't true. See, so you're hitting on you're hitting on a very valid point. And I'm glad you just said that, because it reminded me of that exactly. If we cannot claim to love Jesus
and be intentionally posting mistruths at the same time. It does not work that way. Like, it does not work that way. It can't be one and the same. I'm not saying we can't make mistakes, but like I have like on people's accounts that are like pastors and have multi-million followers, they post something that was not true at all. And I went on there and I politely spoke my piece and even provided the evidence to them, in which case, because I'm not looking to ruffle feathers, like, and I'm very careful about correcting people. I try to always do it in love. But I gave him the information and told him that he was wrong. He even replied on the video that I was right, that he was wrong, but he didn't take the video down.
Right. Well, still viral.
The crap, dude.
Yeah, still viral.
But like, black and white, man. It's black and white, and these are the hard choices we need to make. It's like, you know, like Scripture says, if your right eye causes you to sin, if your right hand, like, it's very straightforward what needs to be done. That's why I didn't hide my videos and keep it was almost like 750,000 likes that I had. And a couple of those videos were at like, one of them was like 7 million. One of them was like at almost 9 million. Man, and crazy. I had constant notifications coming in from those videos that were months old. And I was getting probably $250 to $1,000 in repetitive monthly revenue from those videos, just because they just never stopped. Once they went viral, they never stopped. But I couldn't in good conscience keep any of that data. It's like dirty money, man. It's like
a good name is better than that.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Because I know that the time's coming where, and I'm sure it's already happened, but I know the time's coming where people are going to realize some of these content creators are not who they thought they were. And they're going to realize that some of these people, and I'm not talking about like mistakes maybe that they've made in the past, or like that they're sinners. We're all sinners, and all of us, I don't care who you are, we're all garbage trash without the Holy Spirit. That's all there is to it. I don't care who you are. But like, I'm talking about the people that are intentionally misleading people, intentionally putting fear in people, intentionally farming for views to make money, but simultaneously calling themselves Christians, and then simultaneously trying to like lead people to Jesus. Like, bro, talk about confusion, man. Like, that's as confusing as it gets to someone that's out there seeking the truth, like in absolution. And so I think the time's coming, like sooner than later, where people are really going to start to realize, because like I see people that follow me and agree with the things that I say, posting on some of these creators I'm talking about, posting on their videos and being like, yeah, dude, that's great. Like, amazing. That's genius. And I'm thinking, have you not listened to anything that I've said to you? Like, what in the world is going on here?
You know, sometimes you have to wonder that. And I remember back in the day when I first started to like wake up, and I was like seeing the prosperity preachers, and you'd kind of wonder, like, how does anyone, like, you felt bad for the people in the pews. And then one day you realize they're like, what it says in the Bible, that the false prophets are a judgment on the people, because like you should know better. Like sometimes you should know better. And like sometimes you think somebody's getting it, and you do wonder. Obviously we don't have any clue which video people subscribed from, and like why they started liking our comments. So you think, oh yeah, you guys are with me, you're with me. But it's like, at the end of the day, all we are seed planters. And I think that's the kind of the good and the bad of it, is the fact that we only have so much influence. Like even your best influencers is we're here to plant seeds. And if we're doing what's right, again, like it's not me who changes anybody. It's God the Father draws people to Jesus. And
Absolutely.
I think ultimately, that's like, as I want to end it on, that like fear of the Lord is wisdom. So
it's the beginning.
All fear is not bad. All fear is not bad. Get right with God. You know, that's what I said. If I could tell you anything right now, and obviously if anybody's at home who doesn't know the Lord, this is an opportunity. Again, like as Aaron said, today is the day of salvation. So you don't have to be afraid forever. I think the fear leads you to him, and then perfect love casts out all fear. Guys, cry out to God in your own way. Continue to seek him. You'll find him. Knock, the door will be open to you. Ask will be answered. So I want to end with that. And Aaron, if you got anything you want to say in closing, or anything you want to promote, I know Aaron, he's now on YouTube. He's putting some of his music on there. Once again, he's on TikTok. I'll make sure I'll put all his links in the description before this thing is fully uploaded. But you want to say anything to close?
No, just I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate the opportunity to just hang out with you and talk with you. I appreciate our fellowship offline, and the prayer time and stuff that we share with each other, and the opportunity to pray for each other and edify each other. And like I've told you before, like if I ever seem like out of line or I'm going off in left field, like I want you to let me know. Like I feel the same way with the people that follow me. Like if somebody comes to me in love and corrects me or says, hey, like this is what this is the way I'm perceiving that. Like, we need to know these things. Like, I'm not one of those people that doesn't want to know that stuff. Like, I would like to know that stuff, but I just want to agree with you and just say that, yeah, like, and this is the case for us as creators. And this is also the case as just followers and children of the Most High. Our orders come from him. We take our orders from him. I pray about the things that I should be posting. I pray about them before I make the videos. I pray about them before I edit them. I pray about them after I edit them, before I upload them, and I leave them in his hands and they go where they're meant to go. And that's all there is to it. And I would just encourage every other creator out there that if that's not what you're doing, start doing that. Start praying about every single piece of content you think you want to make before you even start making it. Because not only will that help correct you ahead of time on pieces that maybe you shouldn't make, but it'll also take your wisdom deeper, because what if that is something that absolutely the Holy Spirit wants you speaking of? He might give you supernatural insight into that topic before you post it, and it might reach more people. So all of that being said, I love you, man. I love, like, all of your people have been so good to me. I'm getting ready. I'm almost done with I'm recording a synthwave EP. Synthwave, for those that aren't familiar, is basically just like 80s synthesizer rock. And I've got a history of being in like live rock and punk rock and hard rock bands and stuff. And this is all electronic, which is a switch for me, but it's a lot of fun. The 80s are near and dear to my heart. And it's basically going to be an EP that is like the story of my salvation. In fact, it's going to be called SOS, which stands for the story of my salvation. And so it's going to kind of take the listeners on a journey from like the darkness that I was going through to like ultimately the salvation and where I'm at now. So it's not going to be your typical album. It's more of a concept album, but it's all in 432 hertz. I'll be releasing that stuff everywhere as soon as it's out. I got a new song coming out in a couple of weeks. All of the music stuff is already on YouTube. There's more coming. And that's it, man. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, man. All right.
Yep.
God bless y'all. We'll see you guys soon. All right, so the stream is over. If you want to just chat for a second, sometimes I'll give the people some after hours, some bonus stuff. But yeah, what'd you think?